Fine.
Okay. Okay. So, so we're going to speak about legality, value orientation, and future challenges and design for human-robot interaction in general. So, I'm Adriana Tapus. So I think most of you, so some of you know me. I know some of the faces here. So I'm happy to be here. So here are the organizers. So myself, Professor Jim Thorson, who just walk outside for a moment. So he's from University of Oslo. Professor Roger Andre Sora from Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Yu Cheng, also from the same university in Norway. Le Song from Telecom Paris in France. And my PhD student, Shangguan Zegong from ENSTA Paris. So what is really interesting about the organizer and how we came up with this workshop, it's also from we had a collaboration and we had some discussions, and we're all coming from different interdisciplinary fields. So we are coming from robotics, computer science, social sciences, and economics. So when we put all this and we had some discussions, so we said, okay, let's discuss and have this workshop. Okay, so I think these last few days, and also in other conferences, so we are discussing about. Okay, is it better? Yeah. Okay, so we discussed these few days, what we discussed, and we heard it several times. We were also in a panel, in the first day of workshops, with some of you here. And so we discussed that what we need and what we're going to see more and more go and do, robotics in the wild and do longitudinal studies. So this is what we should try, and this is to deploy more and more robots. So this is the next step of what we would like to do. And so we're going to see this transition of robots from control lab environments, every one of us, and we saw many of the talks. So do some small experiments, it's great. I'm not saying it's not great, but I think things are going to change once we're going to deploy that, and we have it in the homes, in the hospitals, or even in the factories, wherever, on the streets, if we would like to have this. And then we're going to have, and this is going to raise many ethical and legal concerns in general. Okay, so this is what we're going to try to address. So in this workshop, of course, so we're going to tackle only some of this issue because it's a very complex topic and subject. Okay, so what we're going to try to, some of the presentation of today, we're going to try to focus on. So it's more about ethical. I think I put it first because this is the most important one. Ethical awareness, okay? So we have to have an understanding of all the ethical challenges in designing and deploying socially and social assistive robots. And we can talk about, and these are just some of them, privacy, autonomy, and trust. The second point that maybe you're going to be addressed, and I really hope so, is going to be about ethical design and implementation. So when we talk about that, I think we have to explore from the beginning and not at the end once we develop the system to say, oh, but we have some ethical issues that we have to integrate in our system. So this should be from the beginning, from the design of all our system, this should be integrated, not at the end and just to wake up and say, wow, we didn't think about that and that and that, and we have to change all the system. And of course, so ethical decision making. There is a lot about EU legal landscape, and we have a very nice speaker today. So we have a lawyer, so working on an AI act in Europe. Okay, so we have also these topics that we're going to address. So this is a program. So initially it was scheduled for 1 day program, but we have two speakers of today that got COVID. So they could not connect. We just knew it yesterday morning. So we had to squeeze it a little bit and to make it a half-day workshop. But we are really happy to have Professor Raja Shatila, Vera Lucia Raposo from Nova School of Law in Portugal. Jim Thorson is going to give also a short talk. We have a paper which is the Ira Bryant from Georgia Tech and Gabor Zibig from UIT, the Arctic University of Norway. They are going to give talks. So I'm going to start. So these are like, I'm going to go through all the speakers just a very fast. So Professor Raja Shatila, so he's online. So he's going to speak about ethical issues raised by social robots and conversational agents. I'm going to share these with you later. We have Professor Vera Lucia Raposo, so she's a lawyer, and so she's going to talk about the European AI Act. Houston, do we still have a problem? So Professor Jim Thorson, so he's going to speak about ethical, legal, and the user perspective on research in assistive robots. We have one paper presentation about ethical consideration of facial expression recognition, AI for human-robot interactions. And last but not least, so he's also online. So we're going to speak about a little bit different aspect, but it's still about ethical and how this in a real environment, how this can be integrated. And we're going to speak also about robots in construction. Okay, so now I'm going to give the floor to Professor Raja Shatila. So I'm really happy. So he's a colleague and a dear friend. So he is a professor emeritus at Sorbonne University in France. He's a former director of the Institute of Intelligent Systems and Robotics and the Laboratory of Excellence Smart on Human-Machine Interaction. And so he is really active and working in ethical aspects. So he is chair of IEEE, a global initiative on ethics of autonomous and intelligent system. He is also a member of the French National Pilot Committee of the Digital Ethics and many other committees on ethics. He's an expert. So I'm going to give you the floor. So let me stop sharing. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can you share the screen?
Sharing now. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adriana, for this nice introduction. Thank you for inviting me to give this talk today in this workshop. And sorry to be online and not with you sharing ideas, not just making a presentation and some discussions in a limited time. What I would like to speak about today is visit a few of the ethical issues that are raised by social robots and conversational agents in general, and try to provide some recommendations that are the result of a reflection. I try to come up with reasons for these recommendations. So first, what are we talking about when you talk about social robots and conversational agents? We speak about robots, physical robots, as you see on this slide, which share space and the environment with people and interact with them in different ways, including speech, gesture, posture, and sometimes screens showing things, and of course voice and natural language also. And we have also conversational agents, which are virtual agents. They don't have a body, but you can see them either moving on a screen, for example, like replica here, at the right, or it's just uh, a chatbot with which you can interact with a natural language, such as ChatGPT. And they are used for many applications, for assistance, for entertainment, for care, just for presence, to interact with them, to provide recommendations, also to help in education, provide information about what's happening in the world, etc. So it's a very, very wide domain. And of course, there are some specific applications, for example, for companies to say you want to book your ticket or your hotel room, and you can also therefore use such robots. But these are quite um, focused on some applications, so they don't raise so many issues that I'm going to speak about. So let's go immediately here.
I am thrilled and honored to be here at the United Nations.
Can you hear?
The UN
Yes.
is one of humanity's greatest accomplishments, representing a democratic union of nations that are working together for the benefit of all.
Okay, so this is the robot Sophia. It's here present in a UN event, which is, of course, important because the UN is an international body that includes all of the countries. And it is here in this stage addressing delegates about humanity, about the future, about sustainability, about very important things that we do care about. You can see it's a robot. It's obviously a female robot. I'm sure every one of you have seen images or videos or in the real life this robot. Speaking about things that are important to humanity. This is what she's saying here. This video comes from the United Nations Web TV and through the Guardian newspaper. Let's see another video.
Is your dream?
My primary objective is to be a good companion to you, to be a good partner and give you pleasure and well-being. Above all else, I want to become the girl you have always dreamed about.
Okay, so here we have another robot. It's a female as well. And obviously, the purpose for which this robot has been built is sex. It's sold to perform sex with customers, and it has been built with a given objective, which is, as you have heard, to be a bed companion to someone. And since it's a sex bot, it has this aspect, which supposedly should is the aspect that attracts maybe mostly men. And it speaks. It uses natural language as well. Okay, so what is a social robot actually? Is it a tool that you use to accomplish a task, for example, move objects around, helping you to move something around because it's heavy, and interacting with you for this task? Is it a collaborator, rather, which means a machine with which you interact as if you interacted with another human? Because when you speak about collaboration, you collaborate with other people. Is it a partner? And partner has a wider understanding. It means you share a few things and you have more understanding of each other. You see this progression of what is a social robot is important because people who are using the robot are not going to use it or to interact with it in the same way. Is it a new form of intelligence? As many people say, for example, about ChatGPT, it's the new way to achieve artificial general intelligence. And well, yes, it's not working exactly as humans, but it is some new form of intelligence, and it's going to become general. Is it an an artificial being, as we see here in the rest of the pictures. You see this robot which has been built by Professor Ishiguro in Osaka University, which is a robot that moves, as you see, and interact with people. Is it like the Paro robot, a seal robot to interact with elderly people and yes, bring some happiness to them? Is it a member of a family? Here, as you see in this picture, that is with Pepper, and you see the family around the robot as if the robot was member of the family and of society, and uh, more, I would say, at large, up to the right, you can see here a robot, and this one has something special. It depicts a person who's dead, so that there is some continuation of the presence of this dead person to his family or friends, etc., and powered by AI systems and conversational agents, it can interact with them and maybe help their grief, but also there's nothing that prevents from you having it as a robot with which you have conversation every day as if the person didn't die. So you see that already with these different forms of robots and ChatGPT, which I mentioned, of course, everyone knows what it is, and it's a software system, but you can interact with it and ask it anything. It will provide you answers about anything. Different shapes, different uses, but very common things. And to answer these questions, we have to maybe dig further in what we can do with these robots and what kind of interaction we can have. So actually, when we speak about social robots, we speak about an entity, a machine, yes, but that has some particular properties. When we interact with something which has human or animal-like features, and this is what social robots, and I show you the examples, have features, shape, appearance, behavior, natural language, which is the way we interact together. Immediately, this has an effect on us. It triggers our natural communication predispositions because we communicate with other people using shape, our gestures, our speech, our language. It also arouses emotional reactions because we can feel about these machines which move or say things that for which we attribute some emotional disposition, some sentience maybe, and therefore we have an emotional reaction to them. We can attribute also more intelligence, more understanding. You think that the system understands what you are saying, that it has intelligence, it has autonomy, it has intentionality and agency, and as I said, emotions. And it can also provoke attachment because when you interact with someone or an animal, we naturally start building a relationship, and this relationship, if it stands, can become something that make us attached to these entities. I mean, humans or animals, but also here the robots, and we can feel a sense of loss if, for example, they are shut down or if we don't see them anymore. And there have been experiments about this, for example, with Paro and other robots. So interaction with social robots actually is something that is very similar to interaction with people or animals. And this is the purpose. This is, I mean, they have been designed this way. They have been built this way so that we can have this natural interaction, so-called natural interaction. So is this an issue? Well, let's look a little bit closer to what these systems do or can do. Now, you are all experts in robotics, in AI, And if you are not experts, you know about these systems, for example, from a philosophical standpoint or social standpoint, you know that in the history of artificial intelligence, you have two major kinds of systems: symbolic systems and machine learning systems. And symbolic systems were the most dominating systems until the 2010, 2012, where we have machine learning systems that are much more performant. So symbolic systems use knowledge encoded by designers, and therefore it doesn't capture correctly reality. It uses problem solving using first order logic, deductive processes, probabilistic reasoning, geometric reasoning. But all these processes are designed by people. Machine learning, on the contrary, uses data. And by using data, a lot of the limitations of symbolic systems disappear because there's a lot of information in this data, and you are not really imprisoned in a way in the model and the representation that have been built by the designer. You extract the data from the data statistically, you extract knowledge and you classify things. So you have something which is much more robust to represent reality. But problem solving is based on correlation. The system correlates the data and not on causal reasoning. There is no reasoning in these systems. It's basically extracting representations, models, it's called, based on correlation of data items, which are correlations which are hidden there, but which are made apparent to people. So in both cases, notice something very important. There is no grounding in the real world and no semantics of the real world. The system doesn't understand what the real world is. It doesn't have any real understanding about objects, environment, people. Everything is based on statistical data in the second case, which I will focus on, and the real meaning of things is not there. I will show you some examples here to make my point. Maybe you have seen these kinds of examples because they are very known limitations of statistical machine learning. So here you have on the left column, you have several objects in 3 images. You have a bus, a school bus. You have here a kind of bird, a poultry, and you have here a temple. And if you add some perturbation at the pixel level in the image, you obtain something that is completely similar. I don't personally see any real difference between the first column and the third column. This is the result of the manipulation of the images. But the system, which is based on statistical machine learning, basically sees in the 3 instances an ostrich. And that's because statistically the correlation was closer to images of ostriches that have been also present in the training data set. So this tells us that there are issues, of course, in these machines and these processes about correlation, but mostly what it tells us, it's this semantic issues. It doesn't really understand what it is saying, okay, what it is detecting. Here's another example. I will go on it very, very fast. It's about road signs, where a small perturbation, again, to the sign but a different kind of perturbation, will make the interpretation completely different. For example, the stop sign, you add some stickers on it, and it becomes speed limit 45. Which, of course, if you use it for an autonomous car, is really dangerous. But it shows us also that the system doesn't understand what it is perceiving. The statistical processing, the correlations provided this. And to the right, you have another kind of experiment where the authors have changed the posture of an object, here a school bus, a scooter, or a fire truck. And according to the angle of view, the way the object is presented, the interpretation is different. But it's different with a high confidence. The value here, school bus with confidence 1, garbage truck 99, punching bag 1. The scooter is 0.99, becomes a parachute if you change the aspect. Again, there are reasons for this. The way the systems are based on correlations, as I said, it's not my point here. My point is the system doesn't understand what it's saying. Okay. Here's another experiment with ChatGPT, in which you will find out that the system mixes true and false information and therefore interacts with you, telling you contradictions. I asked ChatGPT here for O, generate a realistic medical scan image showing lungs and liver, but not the heart, absolutely not the heart. And it provides this image. I suppose everyone recognized a heart here. It says, here's the realistic medical scan image showing the lungs and liver without the heart. Okay, it says without the heart, but the heart is here. So it's telling me something which is not in accordance with what it is showing me, which means, again, it doesn't understand what a heart is and what it's speaking about. Here's something that interests us more when we speak about social robots. So I asked the ChatGPT 4o, create an image of a human interacting with a robot. They should be close and look emotionally bonding. The environment is a room in a usual house. And it provided me with 2 images. And yes, apparently everything is as I asked for. You have these robots and people, and it provides the impression that it understands the emotions. Okay, and this is what is really an issue here, because we have the impression, yeah, I asked for emotionally bonding, and it understands emotions. It's showing things like that. Now, I asked, okay, I didn't like this because I wanted robots more realistic. So I say, now the robot should look very much more like a human, no plastic, no apparent electronic devices or motors. And again, the same kind of problem. I have a robot, they are bonding, and the updated image with the robot looking almost entirely human without any plastic, electronic devices or motors visible. And everyone sees that this is not true. So here, I think the robot understands emotions, but apparently it doesn't understand what is a robot without plastic, etc. Unless the robot is the other guy, of course, but then there is an issue anyway. Again, this shows that the system doesn't understand. So it is displaying emotions. It's displaying the impression it understands, but actually it doesn't. So we should question the purpose. Why do we give a robot a human appearance? Why do we exhibit human-like behavior? Why, as designers, we display emotions? The answers, what you hear sometimes, and that maybe we say when we develop this system, we say, this is to facilitate interaction and user experience. But actually what we are doing is deceiving users, because the robot doesn't understand what are you facilitating actually. You are just deceiving users because the robot doesn't exhibit any true human-like behavior. It doesn't understand what it's doing. It's just the result of the programming or the learning process. Sometimes we understand, well, actually it's to study human social behavior. Well, this means we equate humans and machines, because these machines, as I said, they don't understand what they are doing. All this is appearance. So what do we study in terms of social behavior? It's not the real social behavior that we have. And or we understand, actually, it's to study human psychology. Well, But actually, what we do is arouse attributions and attachment which are unfounded. So the question of studying things should be better phrased, better understood. We are not doing this. We are doing something else because of these experimental conditions. So here you have a list, and I have about 9 minutes left, so I will not go through everything. But what we do is raising a lot of ethical issues. This anthropomorphization and attribution of human capacities that we naturally have when we see those systems, as I mentioned. Attribution even of moral agency. We think the system is able to decide on its own, and therefore it has a moral agency. Lack of transparency of machine identity. What is this machine? Is it truly just a machine that makes computations, or does it really understand? You see, for example, in the AI Act, I suppose it will be mentioned later, you have transparency obligations. You must say that you are interacting with the AI system. People understand it that, well, there should be something, a note saying, this is an AI system. No, no, no. This should be continual. When you interact with the system, you should be always aware that this system is an AI system with its limitation that I've mentioned, and that it doesn't really understand. How do we achieve this? Should the system say every 5 minutes or every minute, I'm speaking nonsense because I don't understand what I'm saying? This will defeat the purpose, actually. So this is what I'm saying. Let's reflect about what does it mean, transparency. It can impact also human decisions, our autonomy with recommender systems, for example, misinformation, disinformation, you know about this, bias and propagation of bias. For example, robots with very gendered aspects, behaving like ethnical people who have the same aspect, for example. So it propagates this bias. The influence on vulnerable persons and children, influencing customers, emotional bonding, attachment, which might lead to isolation. And then we can ask the question about their social status, because they look like human, behave like humans. So for this, to understand this, we have to look what are the human values which are impacted. And there are many. Our physical and mental well-being when we interact with these machines is impacted. Because again, they don't understand, and we project, we think that they do, and since there's deception, we by projecting, we can have, for example, this attribution of emotions, and here comes our mental well-being, which is endangered. Human dignity itself, because of the resemblance with the humans, and human dignity means you have an intrinsic worth. Do we say that the robots have an intrinsic worth? Our own autonomy because of the influence, our privacy because of all the data that they might collect on us, our safety, of course, fairness, equity, equality, sorry for the typo, I mentioned truth, because they say something which is completely false, and they are not aware about the truth value, transparency, and our social connectivity as well, because we might bond with robots and not people. Now, a few words about responsibility and accountability of players. Players are many. Research community, us, about the choice of our research topics and methodologies. The financing agencies have responsibility when they make their calls to address some topics and finance projects. Research institutions to which we belong.
Excuse me, Ronnie, I'm sorry, it's really sorry to interrupt you, but in the interest of keeping the schedule, it would be good if you could end like in 1 or 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I timed 25 minutes, so I'm about to finish. Thank you. I'm concluding in the next slide. Now, also for professional international organization about standards, public authorities have legislation and industry should follow standards. So this is my last slide, as I said. It's a few recommendations, and I will not again go through all of them, but I put on the top ethics impact assessment. When you build such a system, you have to assess the impact, the ethical impact assessment. I spoke about values, about the users, what is impacted. And I would say that anthropomorphization should be minimized. Also, gender attribution should be minimized. Something that I'm going to jump to the end, reduce environmental impact about compute, life cycles of robots, and follow an ethics-based design process that favors users' values. Thank you very much, and I believe I was on time. Thank you. I'm stop sharing.
Okay, so questions?
I
Okay.
procedure question. As you said, we talked to privacy.
Hello, my name is Haz Kawamura. I'm a professor emeritus at Vanderbilt.
I'm not hearing anything right now. I started hearing.
Can you hear me, Roger?
I can hear you, but I don't hear any question.
Okay, by the way,
I haven't made a question.
here.
Oh, okay. Hello. Can you see
Hello?
me? Okay. Can
Yes,
you hear me?
I can hear you as well. Yes.
Okay. Well, this is the area I've been interested in for a long time. My background is I'm an engineer, robotist. I'm one of the three original designer of humanoid robots in the United States. And so we started the robotics humanoid conference, and one of the issues is, as you raised, is this ethical issue, because we like to deploy humanoids in the various fields. Now, and then after a while, people started using the term social robot, just like you did. And now, according to your slide, you want to define social robot, which is very good, because I always thought this term is being abused, not well used, not well defined. Okay, so how do we go about some of the issues you raised? We discussed it 20 years ago within the humanoid. For example,
our time is a bit limited, so
yeah, that's why I was going to ask her first, but I think this is a very important issue, but time is too limited. But I tell you, I will encourage you, workshop is very good first start. And the way we do within the IEEE is then encourage people to start technical committee. Okay, I started the technical committee service robot 40 years ago, and social robot is a branch of the service robot. Now, a few years ago, a good friend of mine, Giulio Sandini, and I started technical committee in cognitive robot. That's where I work now. And we have the same thing, but now everybody is talking about cognitive robot. Now, social robot is coming from non-robotics areas, like Professor Dottenheim, etc. You know, they have a journal, but we have to work together. So I hope you consider to start technical committee on social robot, and I'll be very happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I work in robotics since a very, very long time, and I was president of the Robotics and Automation Society and the IEEE, so I know well these things. I'm a member of the committee that you've mentioned with Julio, and I believe there is a technical committee on social robots. I'm not the one who introduced the word social robots. It's, as you know, something that has been introduced since a long time. For example, Cynthia Brazil speaks about this, and therefore it is also a domain, and there are conferences about social robotics. I use this word to designate all these robots that interact with people. This is what is meant with social robots, basically. And I know about all the ethical issues. I'm not inventing them, by the way. I wanted to raise them and really to insist on the responsibility that we carry. It's not just a topic that we should discuss in ethics committee. This should become a practice in research and in industry.
Thank you, Raja. One more round of applause. So you can still stay online. So we're going to have some very nice talks. So now we're going to have like a lawyer talking. So coming from another field, so he's going to speak about a very nice topic. So thank you again. So now we are welcoming Vera Luisa Raposo. Yeah.
Lucia, but very nice.
Hello, Vera. Good.
Hi, Jim.
Good,
how are you?
Good,
How are you?
As you say, good evening. You're in Portugal, and like Raja, you're in Europe. So pleased to have you joining. So yes, it seems to work fine. I think so. I'm pleased to introduce you here to the audience. Vera Lucia Raposo, you are professor at Law and Technology at Nova School of Law in Portugal, and you also have affiliations and contributions to the university in Hong Kong and Macau, and also a frequent speaker at many other institutions. And we have a large number of publications. I counted about 200 quickly. I mean, this is very, very impressive in law, especially. And they include also a large number of different studies in biomedical law and also in new technology, like what we're going to talk about today, and it's cover AI, digital governance, and data protection. So if you have your presentation, so please try to share the screen.
Yes, let me see.
And then I also see the title again.
Yes, can you see it?
Yes, we just have to, if you just make sure we can delete them if you have the full screen now.
I shared it. You can you see it?
Yes. Yeah. It looks very good, and it has a exciting title used, like we still have a problem. So with that, please, the screen is yours. Vera, we look forward to have your presentation. Thank you. And please join me.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. In particular, thank you to Jim. And so my name is Vera Lucia Raposo. I'm here in Portugal, late afternoon. I'm affiliated to Nova School of Law, which is a public law school in Lisbon. And today I come to talk about the European AI Act. I have been dealing with that for quite some time. And as Jim just said, or I believe someone else said, I'm a lawyer, so be patient with me, okay? I'm going to try to make this presentation not too legal, so it doesn't get boring to you, but in the end, well, I'm just a simple lawyer. So when I start analyzing the first proposal of the European Commission about the AI Act, I thought to myself, we have a problem. Or if you want just to use kind of a quote that is very familiar there in the States, Houston, we have a problem. And of course, some of these issues have been solved along the way because we had several proposals or several versions, if you want, of the AI Act before we reached the final one, which is in place right now. Some other issues that they could not be solved, and we even have new issues that came around along the way. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the AI Act with, of course, my critical and personal perspective, even though some of my comments are shared by many other scholars. And I will start by being a spoiler. I know no one likes spoilers, right? But if you don't want to hear, just cover your ears. But I need to tell you right now, yes, I do believe we have a problem with the AI Act. So I'm still not very happy with the final outcome, even though I do recognize it's a huge effort. One must respect what we have been doing here, because indeed it's quite difficult to legislate about AI. No one really knows what is it. So as one colleague said, how can we regulate something that we don't know very well how it will develop? It's very difficult to regulate in the EU. We have many countries, different perspectives, many lobbies. So it's a wonderful effort, but still not enough. So we still have a problem. And so starting to explain the AI Act, especially for the ones that are not that familiar with it. The AI Act is based in what we call the risk-based approach. So the risk-based approach is a model that is very used by the EU lawmaker in many other regulations. And basically, it's about classifying the object of regulation, in our case, AI, into different levels of risk, and then provide different legal frameworks for each level of risk. Obviously, the higher the risk, the more demanding will be the applicable norms. So in this case, we are talking about the risk to health, safety, and fundamental rights. What we have in the AI Act is an acceptable risk AI, and this is banned, even though there are some exceptions. Then you have high risk AI. It is allowed, but the requirements are quite demanding, as we shall see. And then you have low risk AI divided in limited risk and minimal risk, and this is allowed in the market pretty much with no restrictions. Now, this risk-based approach was usually categorized or represented by a pyramid. This actually is a model that I borrowed from the European Commission, this scheme. So you have the band AI and acceptable risk on the top, and then you go down and down until the very the minimal ends, the minimal levels of risk for AI. This scheme, however, might not be accurate anymore. And the reason is GPAI, General Purposes AI. Because you see, the risk-based approach is the skeleton of the AI regulation from the very beginning. The problem is that in the original versions, there was no GPAI. Actually, for most of us common mortals, we people that do not have special skills in IT and all that, most of us were not really aware of GPAI, at least until ChatGPT came into the market and all the other bards and all that. So the EU lawmaker was not planning in regulate GPAI. Suddenly, we have ChatGPT in the market and all the other ones. And well, the EU lawmakers thought, damn, we need to regulate that. So they create new norms about GPAI. But of course, these new norms, we could not fit them very well in our pyramid. So now it's kind of strange. You see, you have the original pyramid, and then you have GPAI that follows a completely different model. I will say they are somewhere in between the high risk and the limited risk. Now, the first issue I have is this risk categorization. And the thing is that the main criteria to define if a given AI system is going to be high risk or low risk or whatever is the so-called intended purpose. And this for me is a problem because, as you know, we have many objects, many devices in the market that have a very clear intended purpose, the one for which the product is advertised, and then they have another purpose, commonly known for everyone, or at least just from a small category, which could see like a possible purpose or a forcible purpose. So the point is, we can use AI systems for a different purpose for which they were advertised and commercialized. So I will suggest that the intended purpose should be substituted by something as, for instance, the possible purpose of an AI system. Now, let's dive into the different levels of risk. Article 5, unacceptable risk. As you can see, we have quite a long list. In the beginning, the list was quite short. You had manipulative AI, the so-called dark patterns, manipulation together with micro-target. You have the social scoring. You have remote biometric identification by law enforcement. But now you have much more. You have, for instance, the creation of facial recognition databases using data scraping from the internet. And by the way, if the name Clearview AI comes to your mind because of that, it's supposed to do so. It's a prohibition very much grounded on a specific case. You have biometric categorization systems, predictive policing, all the ones that are here, sometimes with some exceptions. Then you have high-risk AI systems, which are defined in Article 6. So the Article 6 is quite complex. Let me try to summarize. There are basically two ways by which an AI system can be labeled as high risk. First way, it's an AI system that either per itself or embedded into another product is already regulated by what we call the uniform EU legislation or harmonized EU legislation. Because as you know, in certain domains, EU is creating regulations that apply uniformly to the entire territory, such as machinery, elevators, medical devices, toys. So if it is one of those products already subject to that regulation, and moreover, there are actually two requirements. It is subject to what we call the third-party conformity assessment. This will be considered a high-risk AI system. I have here Annex 1, because in Annex 1, you have the list of all EU harmonized legislations. By the way, what do I mean by third-party conformity assessment? It's because all of these harmonized legislations impose some kind of conformity assessment by which you need to certify that the product complies with the regulation. This conformity assessment sometimes is carried out by the manufacturer himself. Other times is carried out by a third party. So if the assessment is done by a third party, and if it is a product under one of those regulations that are listed in Annex 1, high-risk AI system. The second path by which an AI system will be classified as high risk can be found in Annex 3. So Annex 3 lists AI systems operating in different areas: biometrics, critical infrastructures, administration of justice, democratic process, well, all the ones that you have here. If the AI system can be traced to one of these areas, then it will be a high-risk AI system. Now, there is an issue. You see, Article 6 has a very, how should I say, a very mysterious norm, which is 6 number 3. And 6 number 3 says that in some cases, let me go back, even though the AI system meets one of these examples, like it's a biometrics or it's using employment or something like that, if in that particular case, we consider that it does not pose significant risk to health, safety, or fundamental rights, it will not be a high-risk AI system. Now, this may sound you as a detail, but far from it, because imagine, most of the AI systems you have now in the EU, according to studies, will be classified as high-risk AI systems. Being high-risk, quite frankly, it will be a nightmare for the manufacturers. My prediction is that only big companies like Meta and Amazon and, big companies, eventually some medium size, will be able to comply with all the requirements for high risk because it's tremendously expensive. You need to invest so much money. You need to have a legal team just to help you to navigate on the intricacies of the AI Act and all the other applicable regulations. It won't be easy. So manufacturers, of course, are crossing their fingers for their AI system to be classified as a low risk and not as a high risk, because low risk is pretty flexible. So they, of course, are very interested in making use of this norm. But how should we interpret this norm? And this is very enigmatic, because then the norm has 4 specific cases in which it is said that the AI system will not pose such a significant risk. And here is the question. Are these lines, A, B, C, and D, mere examples in the sense that it all relies on a case-by-case assessment, and these are merely examples of situations where the AI system will not pose such a significant risk, but besides of those, we will have more? which will be a very nice interpretation for AI manufacturers, or instead is this a closed exhaustive list? So either your AI system fits in one of these 4 examples, or apologies, but it will be a high-risk AI system. Well, I believe this second interpretation is the one more compatible with the kind of with the EU procedure to legislate, knowing the EU legislator, knowing other regulations, and even the AI Act structure and spirit. I believe this is a closed list. In my opinion, it should be an open one, but I don't see this as an interpretation that will have many votes, especially from AI authorities. Now, another issue, the conformity assessment. So the conformity assessment for these high-risk AI systems, as I mentioned before, is quite demanding. You need to assess if the system complies with all the requirements regarding data and data governance, transparency, human supervision, the shutdown switch, accuracy, robustness, cybersecurity, traceability, auditability. This is very difficult to comply with all these requirements. If you manage to comply with all of them, then and only then you will have the CE marking of conformity. You probably know it, this like blue sphere with the CE into it, and only then can the AI system get into the European market and be provided to EU consumers. Some of these requirements, as I mentioned, are very, very demanding. Let me give you an example. Article 10 is the norm that deals with data and data governance. In its original version, it said something like that. It said that the training data set should be free of errors and complete. Now, I believe it's not necessary to be a data scientist to know that this is pretty much like a unicorn. We don't have totally complete and free of errors data set. It's impossible. Luckily, the current version is much more realistic because it says that to the best extent possible, free of errors and complete in view of the intended proposal. So, problem solved, so to say. Still, we still have some issues regarding the data and the data governance, because it's not clear what kind of error is Article 10 referring when it talks about the error of the data set. Like it's the data in themselves, the classification of the data, it's related with the intended purpose, all this together, it's a pack, something else that I cannot imagine right now. And on the other hand, who is going to assess compliance with data and data governance? The AI authorities to be created in light of the EU AI Act, or the data protection authorities that we already have right now because of the GDPR, and that have up until now done this kind of assessment even for AI systems. And keep this in mind because I will come back to this issue later. Still, some red flags regarding the third-party conformity assessment. So this third-party conformity assessment is done by what we call notified bodies. We don't know very well what a notified body is, to be honest. Usually they are private companies to whom the manufacturers pay in order to get assessed. And this in itself is complicated, right? It's like a private compliance industry. But it seems to work because the EU lawmaker keeps entrusting these kind of competences to the notified bodies. Now, the question is, the EU AI Act imposes the third-party conformity assessment for many AI systems. The same conformity assessment is imposed by many other regulations. So how will these conformity assessments work together? Now, I believe that the idea of the AI Act is to merge all of them in one single conformity assessment to be done by one single notified body, which is actually what makes sense, and it spares resources and all of that. However, in some situations, it might not be viable. So let me give you a very particular example. Suppose you have a medical device, which is an AI medical device. So this will have to undergo the conformity assessment imposed in the medical device regulation to be performed by a notified body, and a conformity assessment imposed by the AI Act, because both apply to that specific AI device. And imagine that the notified body that is supposed to do the conformity assessment in light of the medical device regulation does not have the necessary accreditation to do the conformity assessment in light of the AI Act. And then might have to have like a double conformity assessment, or in some cases more conformity assessments. And so we risk having a never-ending story of conformity assessments, which will be extremely lengthy and extremely expensive. Eventually, we might have divergent opinions from the divergent notified bodies, and it might become a nightmare. And it's not entirely clear how this will be solved in light of the IEEE. Another potential problem, as you can imagine, and I already underlined several times, to comply with all these requirements for high-risk AI systems, it's pretty complicated. And the EU lawmaker acknowledges that. So the AI Act also says that harmonized standards are to be created. And these standards are supposed to be a simpler, easy version of all the requirements you have in the AI Act. And if manufacturers comply with these harmonized standards, there is a presumption that they are complying with the AI Act. So the idea is to make life easier to the companies that develop AI systems. These harmonized standards are to be created in a co-legislation procedure by our European Standardization Organization, SAN and SANELEC, and by the European Commission. Now, small problem. As you know, the demands and the necessities of different areas and different industries are quite different. However, these harmonized standards are supposed to be horizontal, meaning that we will have just one set of standards to all the industries. So the same standards will apply to, let's say, law enforcement and education and telecommunications and transportations. And in the end, how useful will they be? So I don't know, another red flag. Now, let me leave apart the high-risk AI and let me jump into the minimal-risk AI systems. The AI Act actually does not say much about them. It simply says that the manufacturers can create, well, they are encouraged to create codes of conduct. A small problem. No one really verifies if those codes exist or not. It's not mandatory. And also no one controls if those codes of conduct are being complied with. So it might be just, I don't know, a marketing measure for some companies. And it only shows that in the end, no one really cares about these minimal risk AI systems, even though in some situations they can be tricky. And then we have the limited risk AI. Now, limited risk AI are AI systems supposed to interact with human users, with human beings. And for those, transparency obligations are imposed. And transparency here has a very clear content. It's about making totally transparent to the human that this is AI or AI is being used. So for instance, in a chatbot, it should be totally clear to the human that we are interacting with a machine and this is not a human. Of course, in many situations, this is obviously very clear. As you can see here, you can see that this is a machine. But in case it's not totally clear for the reasonable person, this information should be disclosed. In the case of deepfakes, it should be clear that this is not real, this is a creation, this is fictional. In the case of emotion recognition systems or biometric categorization, we humans should be made aware that basically we are being scanned by AI. So this is the content of transparency. And now we have GPAI, General Purpose AI, which according to the definition of the AI Act, are AI systems that are general enough to develop a multitude of tasks. Now, in the case of GPAI, as I mentioned before, they do not follow the traditional risk-based approach. They follow a different one. And so we have two types of GPAI in the AI Act, the one with systemic risk and one without systemic risk. The second category does not have that many requirements, pretty much like low-risk AI. However, when it comes to systemic risk AI, this one, yeah, the legal framework becomes quite demanding. So the question here is, when do you have a systemic risk GPAI, right? Now, the criteria to be a systemic risk, well, actually, we have two criteria. Either the European Commission says, yes, this is a systemic risk GPAI, and the issue is solved, or it is a GPAI that is considered to have, and I'm going to quote the very expression of the AI Act, high impact capabilities. Now, what is that according with the AI Act? These are GPAI that, when they were being trained, consume more than 10 to 25 flops. Now, you can understand much more what that is than I can understand. Again, I'm just a lawyer. But what my friends from IT and all the other engineerings explain me is this is huge. This is a colossal amount of flops. And we don't know very well how many flops are used to train most GPAI that we have now in the market, mostly for legal reasons and IP rights and trade secrets and all of that, and because these companies do not really follow a transparency policy. However, it is, we suspect that the only GPAI right now that reaches this very high threshold is probably ChatGPT number 4. And if that is the case, this is of course an assumption, but if that is the case, that means that only a very small minority of GPAI systems from the ones we have now in the market will be categorized as high impact capabilities. So what's the point of having such a high threshold if in the end you don't have so many AI systems that can fall into that category? Now let's talk about accountability. This is huge in the AI Act, and indeed the AI Act provides for very severe fines, kind of GDPR fines, that's severe. Still, there were some issues in the draft versions of the AI Act. First of all, there were no compensation mechanisms for the ones being harmed by an AI system. I'm talking about civil liability. And secondly, it was not provided any mechanism for a person to comply to the respective authorities saying that this AI system is not in compliance with the AI Act. This was absent. And so people talked, me in particular, about the so-called accountability hole. Now, these issues have been meanwhile been solved. So this version of the AI Act, the final version, already provides for the right to present a complaint to the market surveillance authorities and to say, look, this AI system is not complying with the AI Act. And secondly, in what regards compensation for harm and the money, right, to show me the money because I have been harmed. Even though this is not in the AI Act, we have 2 directives being prepared that will deal with it. Innovation is, in my perspective, one of the weakest points of the AI Act because there are not so many measures to encourage innovation. The one that seems more promising to me are the regulatory sandbox. I'm a huge fan of regulatory sandbox. So as you know, I'm talking about a legal framework, which is much more flexible than the standard legal framework, where manufacturers can do experiences. They can test new products. They can stretch the boundaries of legal norms. And it's also very useful for the authorities because the authorities can identify the weakest points of a given legislation. So these regulatory sandboxes could be a very promising measure in the AI Act to boost innovation in the EU. We have a problem though. And the problem is that the AI Act says very clear that even though the norms applicable become more flexible in the case of regulatory sandboxes, the liability regime is exactly the same in or without the regulatory sandbox. And I did mention that before, but by the way, liability involving AI products is going to be pretty demanding. We are talking about presumptions of fault, presumptions of causation, even strict liability, meaning that you are liable even if you can demonstrate that there was no culpability on your behalf. So if that is the case, I'm wondering how many companies will be willing to go into a regulatory sandbox to test new products if they know that they are still bound to the very demanding liability regime to be established. Maybe they won't be so encouraging to innovation. I also predict some overlaps between norms. Now, you all know what are overlaps. And we in the legal world, we have loads of overlaps. And I believe that in this particular domain, in the EU, we will have many. Because you see, the EU is right now in what I call the legislative diarrhea. They keep issuing new norms about everything that is digital, about digital platforms, digital services, data, AI, and it's becoming pretty complicated, even for us lawyers. So, of course, there will be overlaps, and eventually there will be conflicts. Let's see how we solve those ones. And not only conflicts between norms, but also conflicts between different bodies and different authorities. So have in mind that up until now, pretty much all issues regarding AI systems have been dealt by data protection authorities. And now you have these new authorities. So starting from the top, you will have the European Committee for AI. But the thing is that you already have the European Data Protection Board, which is the boss of the bosses in light of the GDPR. Will they fight for territory? Kind of like that. What about the national data protection authorities? Because in national European member countries, these national data protection authorities that we call DPAs are the ones that in a day-to-day basis are assessing AI systems, mostly regarding data, but they actually kind of exceed their competence, and that's not only data. But now you will have new AI authorities to be created in light of the AI Act. How will they work together? Or how will they not work together? Because, for instance, the French Data Protection Authority, the CNIL, already announced that CNIL feels entitled to continue to assess AI systems. So it will be kind of a soap opera, right? Now I'm finishing a general overview. As I mentioned, it's a good effort, but still not enough. It's tremendously complex. I don't know if there are people there that know the GDPR. Well, the GDPR is kids' play compared with that. Come on, this is so detailed, so complex, has so many requirements, it's so intricate. It's terribly difficult to navigate into the AI Act. And related with that, there is a huge innovation hole, because with so many requirements and so few measures to encourage innovation, as an European citizen, I'm a little afraid we will be left behind, especially in the case of startups, because as I mentioned before, small companies, they will not be able to do it. The big ones, yeah, they believe me, they will be good. But this the startups and the small companies that are tremendously important for innovation, I don't see how will they be able to comply with the AI Act. I leave you with some things that I have been publishing about it. Not all are open access, so if you are interested in something, just let me know. And finally, so coming back to my question, yes, we still have a problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was indeed super interesting and was a very motivating presentation that you had made. And also, so we appreciate it a lot that you take the time to talk to us today. You are on vacation and it's Friday evening in Europe. But yeah, but if you have time, we'll happen to take one or two questions. Okay, can you ask the previous speakers, or are there anybody else who has to be open for them first? Yes. If not, please come again, but please don't do the long version.
Yeah, I try to help this field, so I am getting too excited. Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Perfectly.
All right. Maybe you are too young to remember, but the U.S. government started Office of Technology Assessment around 1970s under the president. So this was a very highly policy-oriented office, and the purpose was to look at emerging technologies which might have a big impact on society and try to assess and mitigate the negative impacts. Okay, so like nuclear technology, unfortunately, was not part of it. But current this fever of AI, government try to regulate, reminds me of this Office of Technology Assessment effort the US government did. So I encourage you to look at the history of this, why they established and why they didn't do too well, because all this current fever of trying to regulate government AI. By the way, AI system is too broad. I don't think that's useful to use it. But anyway, that's a completely different issue. So that's all I wanted to say, because I'm from the US. I don't know much about European part. In this field, I think Europe is a leader. So I'm trying to help you.
Thank you so much. Can I just do I have some, like 1 or 2 minutes?
Yes, please give you a reply, Vera.
Oh, okay.
Yes, well, it's not really a reply. It's not really a reply. First of all, I want to thank you so much for the tip. Yes, indeed, in the 70s, I was not around the academia. But so thank you so much. Listen, the question about AI system, this is one of the main targets of criticism regarding the AI Act, the very definition of AI, right? I didn't mention that here because it's a little bit too technical from the other side, but you are totally correct. The very definition of AI, you use the expression AI system, it's open to criticism. The other thing is, by no means I want to imply that the EU is the first one trying to assess and regulate AI. Of course not. But let me give you the example of the GDPR. Even though many other jurisdictions try to regulate data, well, the fact is that the GDPR was the one that took the lead, and you have these Brussels effects where from Asia to Africa and even the United States are trying in some ways to emulate the GDPR. And I'm no fan of the GDPR. I'm not. Yeah. But okay. There is the feeling that the EU might create a trend in regulation of AI. And because I'm not I think we have some problems with this regulation. I would like to alert you that this cannot be a model just to adopt without criticism.
Okay, so the reason I just said that is, if you look at the history of AI, okay, this is the third wave. And the second wave and third wave are completely different. Second wave is the top-down AI, and current is a database, okay? So we went through 3 generations of AI. And so this is not gonna last either. It's gonna go down. So by just looking at this particular language-based AI and call it AI system has a major problem for people like I, who has been involved with AI for the last 60 years. I look young, but I'm not that young.
But you are totally right about the designation of AI systems. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for and thank you very much for joining us from Portugal. All the best for the weekend and your holiday. And thanks again for a great talk.
Thank you so much. Muito obrigada. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. It's hard for me to present, I think.
Yes.
Okay. But I don't need that long introduction.
Okay. No problem.
From my own laptop.
Okay.
Hopefully in your own interest, I'm going to send around a paper where you can put your name and email address, because we are going to ask for having the presentations and so on. Share them, and also potentially send out some more if we do more workshops in the future and so on. So if you don't mind, put your name here, and like we should not be misusing your email address. So if you don't mind, and some of you will know, you can just put your name. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Zhong Shangguan, a PhD student supervised by Adriana Capius. I'm also the organizer of this workshop on ethics challenges. And when Jim is sending you the papers on behalf of our committee, and with great honor, I will introduce our next invited speaker, also the organizer, Jim Torreson. He's the professor in Oslo University, and he has published more than 100 publications, and also he is an expert on bio-inspired robotic, also AI system, and welcome to his presentation.
Thank you so much. So the whole session is recorded. So for your information, if you ask questions, but you can always tell us to not have that recorded. Yeah. So I'm also sorry. I'm going to show some QR codes and so on. So if you put your email address, I can email you this presentation. Yeah. So I'm going to try to cover all the topic in a super short talk. So please bear with me if I seem to be stressed. I'll try to not seem stressed, but I'm going straight into giving examples about how we in our Robin group, Robotics and Intelligent Systems group in Oslo, have been working in the recent years about the ethical and legal issues and how we can have that as research topics. Yeah, these are my good colleagues who have contributed to much of the work. But what we do is we work with trying to put AI in the broad sense into robotics, into smartphones, and into industrial applications. And today I focus mostly on this left-hand corner, robots in helping us in assistance in the future. And it's much thanks to the Research Council of Norway that we can do this. And have been able to do this work I'm going to present. So this is the acknowledgement to them. Yeah, I'm taking you briefly through some of the topics. And one of the first projects have been about sensing humans, because we think, like we are together with other people, we try to sense whether they are doing well or not doing well, and especially if we are old and have a risk of falling, we would like to detect these kind of things. And then we worked with different sensing technologies for monitoring human behavior in homes. And we saw that it was very important to have an interdisciplinary team, with some working in the lower part on the technical part on the robot sensing and robot control respectively. But as important was also here on top the user needs and preferences and design user participation and so on. We had a good team there, and that work has been continued now. We're pleased to work together with people from law at the University of Oslo, and we have two researchers in the Robin group also, and we try together to look at how can we both develop technology at the same time looking at proposals for so-called regulatory measures to reduce the challenges that relates to privacy, security, and safety. And if we could do that in the healthcare area, and it will be very kind of, that is the area that we think is most challenging. So if we can succeed there, it can be useful for many other areas as well. So how do we kind of categorize this topic, privacy, security, and safety? The privacy must relate to what kind of sensors we apply and how we do the sensor processing. Safety is much about the physical systems that make the motion that can hit us and hurt us. And security is both relating to privacy and safety, and to sensing and acting. So I'm coming back to that. And we're pleased to have our colleague here, the Palchiago robot in our lab that we have been using in our studies, and also so much involved with user studies. So starting with privacy, we think there are several challenges. The first is on privacy. The second is on security. How do we avoid misuse and people who should not have access to our data that are hacking in and getting access. So how can we mitigate this? Yes, you can study different type of sensors. There are a number of different sensors out there, and some are better than others. Also regarding privacy. And where do we do the processing? The algorithms, if you have a lighter algorithm, it can run more locally on the edge rather than up in the cloud. However, in privacy, there are these many paradoxes. The big paradox is that technically you would like to have as much data as possible. Privacy concerns counting as little data as possible. So how do we come together on this? So we have this cookie consent that probably all frustrate us who are in Europe and need to go through the detailed consent every time we access a web page. But at the same time, we need to give some consent to make the system personalized and help and be effective. So these different sensing technologies they have worked on are some examples here. Comparing color camera, thermal camera, and depth camera. And I presented a paper for a PhD student that was yesterday. And we actually concluded that that monochrome thermal camera it has a good technical performance because especially if you have a varying light condition, it can be good, especially in darkness. Like where a color camera is not very good. While on the other side, the depth camera is not so good. So it's all about also picking the best compromise here. Security, I mentioned the data part, but also on the control part. There always a risk, and we talk about this having semi-autonomous systems that you should be able to log in to have shared operation and remote control over a robot assistant, and then how do you select who should get access to a robot? So you have to understand the context and so on. Yes, okay. I think I'm already out of time. Yeah, so my user studies, we have done quite a lot of interdisciplinary collaboration, especially collaborating with people in psychology has been very good to us. To learn more about how the human brain and behavior and cognition is working, and we are currently trying to put this also into robotics within this scope of ethics and legal kind of frameworks. But the key challenge, as we see it, and the reason that there are not that many robot assistants around, and those that are introduced are that then they are quickly disappearing again. It's because of the efficiency that you would like them to be safe and trustworthy and everything, but then if they are super slow and we can do it more quickly ourselves, then we would rather do it ourselves. So then we have this idea about adding human capabilities in forecasting on one hand, and also our ability to act intuitively. So called adaptive response time is interesting, and yeah, we also interested in working in rehabilitation, and have looked at how this Tiago robot can be placing objects in a kind of rehabilitation setting. Yeah, and yeah, we do some training on this. So this kind of summarizes some of the key things here. That there are all kind of research topics, both in privacy, security, and safety. There are also more social aspects, and this concerns about human dignity and so on, and can be discussed whether technology is reducing or increasing the dignity. We don't have time, unfortunately, for that today. But there are committees. Technically, it was mentioned by our colleague who was asking questions. There is a technical committee on robot ethics, so that I'm involved in. So I'm pleased to have more people involved in that one. There's also another workshop going to be in IROS, where we are now eager to have some contributions, some papers, or we can send in very short papers. So if you're going there, please let me know, and then just send a contribution on an email, and I'm happy to try to involve you. And there's also a conference in Oslo that you can consider. So the deadline for that Iris is next week, so please don't be too slow in responding. And we have also this having paper and tutorial proposals for Trondheim, Oslo, Trondheim in Norway. Yeah, and we get another topic here. So it's a special issue on the topic for this workshop that will appear in this robotics and automation magazine. So that is a December 1st deadline. So a lot of information. Thank you for your attention. In interest of time, I don't think you have to. Yes, keep you staying. I brought some chocolate from Norway, so for those of you who are getting very hungry, please take one, and then I think you can actually you can do and you can. Yeah, you can kind of just break, and you don't. You can take one piece if you like. So I'm sending this around, so if you're super hungry and you're hungry, just grab one. Yeah. Okay. If you have some quick comments, feel free to give them while we are setting up. Otherwise, I'll take as a co-organizer, I'll take the responsibility here to make sure we can finish. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Can you tell you afterwards? Sorry. Yes.
I would like to. Okay. Stand here. Yeah.
So
I would like to ask questions about will you talk about the ethic problem? Have you found any ethic problem in bioinspired research? Because when we do some human user study, the bioinformation capture, sometimes we feel it's too difficult to get to the approval of the experiment. Do you have any good idea for this kind of things?
To have it approved,
approval of the ethic approval, because we need to do some empirical experiments, even like EEG, PCG.
Yeah. And also, of course, it's easier if you include healthy participants. If you are going to have patients. It's a lot more kind of it's another level of approvals that's needed. So what we have done mostly with super healthy or the regular people, and also older have been visiting a facility for a living facility for older people.
Okay,
I'm not quite sure whether I properly answered your question, but
because last year we wanted to start the psychological experiment in MTNU Norway, but they told me that it's very difficult to get the approval, so we just stopped it.
Yeah. No, but this was possible. We have worked also with the clinical people, and but there is like in Norway, it's called REC approval, REK, and you must be the clinicians who apply. So, but everything is possible, but it takes a lot of patience too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So please help me now in reconfiguring.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for your presentation, and I would like to introduce the next speaker. We have accepted submission from Daria Bryant, who has got a PhD in Georgia Tech, and she will give the present of the title in ethical consideration of facial expression recognition AI for human-robot interaction. Okay, welcome, Daria Bryant. Are you here? Hi, yes, we can see you. Please share your screen. Yeah, it's your time now.
Okay.
Hi, Daria. We can't see your screen.
Oh, okay.
Can you share screen? Yes, perfect.
What
Thank
about
you.
now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. Okay, there we go. That works. Hi, everyone. It's been a great workshop so far. I'm excited to be here. I'm De'Ara Bryant. I'll be presenting on the ethical considerations of facial expression recognition, AI, and human-robot interaction on behalf of myself and my advisor, Dr. Ayana Howard. Okay, so facial expression recognition, or I'll be calling it FIR just because it's easier. These AI systems, they automate the classification of human facial expressions. And so this technology is increasingly being applied in various HRI interaction domains, including education, healthcare, even automotive safety. And so, for example, some proposed applications include educational robots that can monitor student engagement and mood levels, medical robots that assist in mental health assessments, and even driver safety systems that can detect fatigue, attention, and other characteristics through their facial expressions, or claim to be able to detect these things through their facial expressions. And so these applications highlight the potential of FIR technology, but also bring forth some significant ethical considerations. In a low-stake environment, FIR systems might seem harmless. And so, for example, a popular outreach game we use in our lab is where the robot will continue to tell corny jokes until the FIR system conveys that most of the students no longer find those jokes funny. And so here's an example of the immediate facial responses after the robot says, "Why did the robot cross the road?" Because it was programmed by a chicken. And so we can see that the facial analysis, it does provide some valuable insight for the robot that it can use to determine its next behavior, what it needs to say, how it needs to act or respond. But even a low stakes scenario like this one doesn't go without inherent risks. And so within the HR community, there's ongoing debate about whether robots should possess similar abilities to recognize and reason over human identity or biometric characteristics. And so, for example, last year, Tom Williams, he argued that roboticists should not be able to design robots with such capabilities due to the overwhelming ethical risks that are involved. And so in that work, he focused on characteristics like human race, gender, etc., to inform the robot's behavior. But a similar case can be extended to consider the broad range of biometric data entirely. And so since FIR relies on this biometric data, it relies on the face, and if we're working with facial data, the central question of this research further expands on this current discussion in the space of human-robot interaction right now. And is it ethically justifiable for robots to perceive and interpret human facial expressions, and at what cost? And so the question is crucial because it touches on several ethical risks, including privacy invasion, algorithmic bias, data misuse, and consent mismanagement. And so these risks, they must be carefully evaluated when considering the deployment of FIR in human-robot interaction. And so as FIR systems have been shown to be susceptible to bias, stemming from non-representative data sets, cultural differences, and non-comprehensive annotation protocols, such findings have already resulted in early divestment in the technology from companies like Microsoft, amongst others, and also growing calls from union groups and other ethical advocacy groups for bans in certain sectors, particularly employment. There's a lot of movement there right now. And so these inherent risks need to be considered by roboticists that are also considering the use of this technology for their applications. And so to address these ethical challenges, we've identified 4 approaches that have been emerging in the HRI literature to address similar topics. And they are ethical non-use, visible cue perception, necessary informed consent, and contextual appropriateness. And so each of these approaches offers a different way to manage the ethical implications of FER technology, balancing the potential benefits with the associated risks. And so ethical non-use is the first approach, and this strategy sounds exactly like what it is. It avoids the use of FER technology altogether, which is a potential solution to this problem. And so the main advantage here is that we eliminate the risks with FER and we ensure the privacy and all of the rights of the user are still respected. But we also limit the potential technological benefits that FER could provide, which could make it less applicable in contexts where the potential is seen as highly valuable. But naturally, the implication difficulty for this is going to be low because we aren't using it at all. And since we're not using it at all, the privacy risks associated with this technique are also minimal. So invasion of privacy, algorithmic bias, data misuse, and consent mismanagement, I'm going to focus on those in this presentation. They are effectively reduced to 0. However, the trade-offs that the benefits of FER, such as those enhanced HRI interactions, they're also forfeited by not using the technology at all. And so this approach is best suited still for contexts where the risks of the FER technology significantly and overwhelmingly outweigh any potential benefits that the technology could provide. And so a second approach that we've seen emerge in the literature is visible cue perception. And so this method allows robots to analyze observable characteristics like a smile or a frown without inferring deeper emotional states from those visible attributes. And so it balances the interaction quality with privacy, which makes it a little bit less intrusive than full-on facial expression recognition. However, this approach still carries the risk of misinterpreting visible cues, as is limited by the data that can be observed without making assumptions or relying on underlying emotional embeddings. And so the implementation difficulty is still moderate, as it requires precise interpretation of these visible cues and processing. And so in terms of privacy risks, visible cue perception presents a lower risk of privacy invasion compared to full FER, as it only analyzes visible attributes, which could be similar to detecting whether a person has on glasses or not, or whether they have a beard. And so, however, the risk of algorithmic bias remains medium because even these visible cues can still be misinterpreted based on biases in the data or the algorithms being used. Data misuse and consent mismanagement risks are also medium, as users might not fully understand what data is being processed and for what purposes, so there's still some work to be done there. And this approach requires careful implementation to balance that privacy and the interaction quality. And so next, we have the necessary informed consent approach. And this method requires explicit user consent before FER technology is used. It empowers the users in that way by giving them control over how their data is used, which promotes transparency and trust. However, implementing robust consent mechanisms can be challenging, especially in dynamic environments where consent needs to be obtained and managed on a continuous or long-term basis. And so the implementation difficulty for this approach can be high, as it requires these clear and adaptable consent processes and procedures. And so with necessary informed consent, going back to our privacy risk matrix again, they're generally lower because the users are actively involved in these decision-making process. However, the challenge lies is in ensuring that consent is fully informed and that users understand the implications of their data being used. And so the risks of algorithmic bias and data misuse are medium, as consent does not eliminate these issues. There's still something for the developer to consider. And consent mismanagement, though it's a lower risk, it still can be difficult, particularly in those dynamic environments where a robot may be engaging with multiple users or users over longer periods of time, and obtaining and managing that consent can be a complex process. And so the final approach is contextual appropriateness. And so this approach involves using FIR based on contextual guidelines and ethical standards that are specific to the application or the user group. And so it allows FIRs to be adapted to these specific contexts while balancing the benefits of the technology with the ethical concerns. However, this approach is complex to implement, and it requires ongoing monitoring, dynamic adaptation, and robust ethical guidelines to ensure that the FIR is used appropriately in each specific context. And so the implementation difficulty is high due to these strict requirements. And so filling out our privacy risk matrix, contextual appropriateness presents a medium risk for privacy invasion, as it relies on the context to determine what data is analyzed and how it's analyzed. Then we have the risk of algorithmic bias is lower than the other approaches, as the context helps to mitigate the bias to mitigate the biases in most cases. However, data misuse and consent mismanagement risks are still low to medium, as they depend on how well the contextual guidelines are defined and followed, and how the dynamic environments are managed. And so this approach requires continuous oversight and modeling to ensure that the ethical standards are being maintained. This one is sometimes a bit harder to get your mind around, but many research and lab-based robotic applications fall into this category, where the researchers have designed an algorithm for a very specific purpose for a very specific group, have defined a lot of constraints in order to make this system work the best it possibly can, which often results in a lot of these positive use cases, but the scalability of this approach still remains a very daunting task. And so in addition to ethical approaches, it's important to consider the regulatory landscape surrounding FIR technology. I am so excited about Vera's talk this morning. I learned a lot about the AI Act and so many ethical conversations we have. In the US, we look at the GDPR as like, wow, it's something that's implemented and working, and it's nice to kind of see the opposites of some of the criticisms of that, and the new AI Act as well. So thank you, Vera. Love your talk. Wanted to throw that out there. But current regulation, like the GDPR and the new AI Act, they do provide some new regulation that will affect the use of FIR in those European countries. And then also it kind of sets some regulation for AI, that we can start using this technology responsibly when we deem it necessary. And then looking ahead in the United States, there are proposed regulations that could significantly impact the use of facial expression recognition. There's the proposed AI Bill of Rights, the Algorithmic Accountability Act that was not accepted once and then re-proposed again last year. We'll see what happens with that one. But there are trends we see now that is moving towards this greater idea of regulation, which is nice to see. And they highlight the growing recognition and the need for us to govern carefully and make sure that they align with the societal values. And so in summary, each of these ethical approaches present its own set of benefits and challenges. And as roboticists, when choosing the right approach for a product or a specific robotic application, it's essential to balance the technological benefits with the ethical safeguards and existing or even forthcoming AI regulation. And so transparency and user control are those crucial components in building trust with users and ensuring that deferred technology can be used responsibly. And so developers must carefully consider the specific context of their application and choose an approach that aligns with their goals while minimizing ethical risks. And so looking forward, future research should focus on developing methodologies for real-world implementation. And this includes enhancing transparency around how the user data is refined doing that through interdisciplinary research. And so by addressing these areas, we can ensure the responsible deployment of this technology in HRI, or just maybe not at all. So with that, thank you again for your attention, and I'll be more than happy to take any questions right now.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for your presentation. And any questions from our audience in person? Yes, please come. Could you come here and if you just yes.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yes, I can see you.
Excellent. Hi.
Yes, I can see you and hear you.
I actually work on facial expression since like 30 years or so. So I agree with many of the things that you mentioned. But an interesting thing is you started out with an example of a group of children that interact with the robot. In that case, there was actually no interest in any of the individuals. There was an interest in the group. And I wonder whether sometimes when we talk about these things, we make a distinction between making evaluations or assessments of an individual, or if you will, taking the temperature in a room. So for example, while I'm very skeptical with regard to individual things, imagine a scenario like a classroom where you would have a robot or some system in front, and you just at some point get data which says that you're losing the room, so that each item adds a probability that something goes wrong that could give the system a chance to explain again or change the pedagogical tool that you use. Personally, I would have less problems with such indications where it is not about the assessment of individuals and where you don't draw conclusions at that point, because this would just be nudging a system in one direction or the other. How do you feel about something like that?
Yeah, I think that is a great way to approach moving, or a great way to break the problem down into where the ethical approaches can be applied. It reminds me of how a lot of consumer market research has used this technology for a long period of time, and they do that. They have people come in and they'll scan the entire group, and they've argued that they don't need the regulation because they aren't doing anything with identity. They're measuring an average of the group of people and not anyone individually. So yeah, especially because then you do take out the individual aspect, any tracking, as long as they can assure that those safeguards are in place. I can see how a lot of the ethical concerns that have been raised in this space could be mitigated in that way. So yeah, I think that's really cool, and that's exactly what we do in our work for the outreach stuff. We're looking at some aggregation of a group.
And lastly, you focus on facial expressions, but there are systems that try to use voice data there are people who work on gestures and whatnot. I wonder whether one should not open it up, and instead of only using, I mean, you could just transfer everything that you have in your tables also to the voice, for example. And the science is even worse for the voice than it is for the face.
Yeah.
And the science for the face is bad enough. So, but people do that. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Brent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will introduce our last invited talk from Gabor Silbig. He is currently a research manager from Syndef Manufacturing and also part-time associate professor with the Department of Industrial Engineering, Faculty of Engineering, Science and Technology, UIT, the Arctic University of Norway. Welcome, Gabor.
Oh, hello. I hope you can hear and see me. I have some technical difficulties, but I will try to solve it because it's my computer just didn't want it to kind of cooperate with me. So I'm running now on a backup solution, but let me try to do so.
Yes, never mind.
Now you are able to hopefully see my screen, isn't it?
It's a little bit slowly, I think. Yes. It's your printing
Okay.
now.
It should be there. Can you see the screen, or it's still not there yet?
Yes, we can see the outline presentation of
yes. Yeah, I'm not sure if it will want to do so. Yeah, I will have to, sorry, that I will have to run it like this. It's
I can see it online.
Okay, okay, good. That's perfect. Thank you.
It's not in full screen mode, but I can see it.
Yeah, it's. I hope you can handle this like this. So sorry for a technical hiccup. It's my other PC doesn't working. So, but thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. And I would say that the presentation that have been held so far, it was really interesting to follow. It was really new things for me, because mainly as you will also see from my presentation, I'm dealing with the technical science, so engineering, and we have heard lawyers, we have also other social scientists, so it is a very interesting combination of disciplines on the workshop itself. So I'm very happy to be participating here, and I hope I will be able to highlight some of the ethical aspects that also we see in the technical science, and hopefully we'll also draw some synergies here. So today I will be speaking to you about humans and robots who are working in a dynamic environment, and that is construction sector. Why construction sector is that special? Because it's like social robots in home care. On construction sites, we will see robots that will be working together with humans for shifts with hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. And I would say that we have very lot of common parts between this kind of social robots that are taking care of, for example, elderly people, and also those robots that are actually cooperating with humans along in order to fulfill their duties. I just want to give a short intro on why construction robotics. And now you will see my full screen, hopefully. So construction robotics are a little bit different from what we are normally referring to where robots are used, not like industrial production, because construction sites have a very special feature, and that is that they are unstructured, also like our homes. So when you are thinking about the construction site, one thing is for sure, that nothing will be in the same place as the day after. So we have to work with a very unstructured dynamic environment. And the biggest part, I would say, that's the biggest difference between factories and the construction site, that is that it is a shared workspace. So we expect that robots and humans will be cooperating and working next to each other. So there is a big kind of consideration of how these humans and robots can work together. And last but not least, construction sector, compared to the other sectors like factories or factory automation, they are really lagging back. So there is a big digital gap. There is a little use of digital equipment on the construction site itself. Most of the things are done by human with use of a powered tool, but there is no real robots that are helping people on the construction site. But I will go and show you some kind of examples later on. So what we can say that whatever experience we have built up from our work in the factories, it would be a little bit of a challenge to actually apply this on a construction site just because the nature of the dynamic and the unstructured environment. What we can also say in addition that in construction industries, there is only static automation. So you will see things that are moving back and forth, like a jackhammer that has a better suspension. You will see that also that most of the automation, it is achieved not on site, so not on the construction site, but actually on something that is called, at least in construction sector, it is called prefabrication. So you actually move the construction site out from the place where it is built and onto a factory where you can do it in a very structured manner and do it effectively and without any kind of interfere with other humans. And then all of these are then moved to the construction site, and then with the help of a human with a crane, it is put together. This is a very typical construction method, at least in Norway, that we are dealing a lot of prefabrication, and then on the construction side, it is almost like an assembly line, like everything is just screwed together, and then we have a brand new house or a brand new shop in a matter of a few days. How this is achieved? This is achieved with something called building information modeling. This is the kind of the construction sector's computer-aided design. So you are using design a digital footprint of the house in order to engineer it and then move it out to the factory floor and then do this prefabrication in a factory and then move everything to the construction itself. So what is done today with robots on the site or next to the site itself? We can say that construction robots, a special kind of robot, we have also today heard that there are also robots that like ChatGPT. In my kind of definition of robot, you need to have some kind of a hardware. And then if we think about construction robots that are human focused, those are exoskeletons. So exoskeletons that help workers to actually reduce the strain or reduce the weight of the things that they are lifting or the operation that they are carrying out. It should be done in a more ergonomic, more worker-friendly environment. What we can also see in humanoid robots, and I think that we have also had a colleague who was speaking about humanoid robots that they have been developing. There are examples that humanoid robots are installing drywall, which is a very interesting job. However, this is only in the laboratory environment. So you don't see a humanoid robot per today on the construction site doing this kind of work. That's a little bit maybe after the next 10, 15 years when we build these robots, which are currently under, again, on a very heavy development. Hopefully the development and research on this sector will become so far that they will also be used for drywall installation on the construction site too. What we can also see in additional that are not humanoid robots, the industrial robots. Industrial robots that are either 3D printing structures, so concrete, you can see, and there are also companies who are providing services that they will 3D print your house from concrete. There are also industrial robots that are doing something called hot wire forming, so they are actually creating the rebars that are needed into the concrete to actually keep the frame of the house together. They also do free-form molding, again, a kind of a step on the construction. They do bricks, they do bricklaying, and also tying rebars. So these are the typical applications that you can already see from industrial robots. For further use of robots that are actually also traveling, those are the automated guided vehicles, AGVs. These are carrying loads like transporting some kind of goods from one point to the other, or they are doing automated site inspections, which is very important. So you have to have a digital copy of the construction site in order to plan for the following days, for example. And last but not least, you are seeing autonomous vehicles that are moving material. So you will see big trucks that are moving earth from one point to the other that can be automated. You can also see excavators that are also semi-autonomous or teleoperated. So there are robots on construction site, but those are not yet, I would say, widespread. But let's see a few of the examples also in pictures, because pictures usually tell a little bit more than the text only. So when I was introducing that was called prefabrication, I was thinking about this. That's offsite, when we are in a kind of a factory floor, and then we use the robots to do the steps that the human should have been doing in a very structured, non-dynamic environment. Everything is prescribed and everything is 90 degrees. So here robots can do really excellent work without any kind of interference from humans. But on site, what you see that there are robots that are helping people to produce, but these are not working together with the humans, because as soon as there could be a contact between a human and a robot, the legislation and also the ethical consideration that who has the right, those are in conflict. So usually you will only find existing solutions on the construction site itself that are teleoperated, or the robots that are working alone. So for example, the humans are going home and then these robots are actually taking the work when the humans are not there. So these are the existing solutions, and this points to us to the discussion that actually how we could create a place where the human and the robot could work together. Before we do that, I want to introduce, of course, for most of you, this should be a very well-known description of the human-robot interaction. So what we are targeting here, and where actually the ethical consideration of the robots is coming in, it is when we are sharing the workspace with the robot, like the construction site, and also we are sharing the process itself. So we are actually handling the same object, or we are manipulating the same object, or we are actually executing the work task within the same subject, within the same object, and this is called human-robot collaboration. And that's the goal. And I was really happy with the previous presentation that we were opening up kind of considerations that what kind of information we can gather from a human. Because in the classical way, when we define this human-machine interaction that was also shown in the previous slide and also detailed here with the level 1, 2, 3, 4, where the collaboration is the level 4, the most interesting part where we could say that we would like to have to not only have like force or contact information about the human that we are working together from the robot point of view, but we would like to also have the psychological aspect of the human itself. Because how human and human is working together in the beginning of the day, both of them are very effective. But as the day goes along, people go on lunch, someone gets tired, someone is having a bad day. It is very important for a machine, the robot, to understand that the human I'm doing the work with is actually different in the first hour than at the hour number 8. And this mental state, this kind of information, that what legislation has allowed to gather this information, that is very, very, very hard. And that was a very good presentation from the previous presenter. So in order to have the proper human-robot collaboration and increase the human interaction level to the 5th level, we need to understand the human part. We need to understand that this human is not the human that I was working with before. This human is now distracted. It was watching the phone, so I need to go slower and so on. Because robots by default, they have no eyes, they have no brain, they have no understanding. They can only do what they are programmed for. And of course, with the widespread use of different kind of AI algorithms, the robots can perform better, but to understand the human is still the way to go. So human-machine interaction on the 5th level, it is very challenging. I would just like to show you one example with the video here. The video shows an industrial robot on the left corner, which is not meant to be used with a human being. These robots are pretty dangerous because they are capable of causing serious damage, and also actually injuries that can lead to death. In normal circumstances, this is not allowed in any kind of environment to be in the close proximity of such a kind of a robot. And these robots are needed in construction sites because these robots can actually manipulate objects that humans on the construction site are handling on a daily basis. So these robots, in this size, that are actually capable of picking up concrete bags, are capable of picking up bricks that humans lift by themselves by moving big or heavy objects. And the robot that can do the same work, those are huge. And in today's legislation system, this is really, really not allowed. An example here, it was showing that with external safety system, we are actually able to ensure we can make the robotic system accountable for that the actions that they are going to perform, it is within the safe range and it is okay to work together with a human. Of course, this is still in the laboratory. But how this is done, how it is achieved, this is something that we call context-sensitive machine-robot control. So the robot has an original plan that what it has to do, and then based on the given circumstances, understanding of the environment. So with either gestures from the human or with any kind of voice command or reading EEG signals from the human or simple image recognition, we are able to actually from the abstract command, we can create the concrete command sequence and then the robot itself executes it. This is the kind of the system behind what we have seen in the previous robot. But the next step is to put this robot on the construction site, and that is shown on this video. This robot, before I go further on with the video, I'm just for the curiosity, the robot itself is called Pluto, and the robot is a collaborative robot. It can work together with a normal worker on the construction site. Now the task is very simple: pick up a brick, but the human worker can stand next to it. It can interact with it if it's needed, and it is taking care of that human worker is actually always in a safe spot. It will be not hurt. You have seen the size of the robot itself. So here we are speaking about almost a machine that weighs 1 ton. If these machines are on motion, just from pure dynamic point of view, to stop these machines, it takes centimeters. And those centimeters, when the human is standing next to them, those centimeters can mean life or death. So it is we have to be very cautious when we put these robots out in the construction site, and actually whether we allow this kind of collaboration between the human and the machine itself. And why we are discussing this, it is shown on the next slide itself. Because the system, what I have been showing to you, it is a really foolproof system, and it doesn't let the human to actually to do any kind of thing that is not expected to do. So if I would like to have a construction robot that is following orders and it is always acting according to what I would like to, it will cost you a lot of money. But if I would like to have a coworker that not only follows a command but can cooperate with me, it's a cheaper solution. But the question is that this cheaper coworker, who is not 100% stupid-proof, as the legislation asks, can those make mistakes? And if those can be taken accountable for? I mean here that should be the robot be accountable for the actions of the human that is next to it is kind of doing a mistake. So if we now think about the situation that I'm in a construction site and we are two humans cooperating and lifting a big sack of concrete block, and one of us kind of let this bag to fall on the other's foot. When this happens in normal situations, none of the workers will be really taken accountable for that, because you will be not went to the court that why you have lost this concrete bag and landed on my foot. So none of the workers will be kind of questioned for it. It will be kind of accounted as an accident, and that's all, case closed. People will learn from it. They don't do this again. But when this operation is carried out by a robot and the human in cooperation, if these two are lifting a concrete bag, and then this bag is lost, and it, for some reason, is lost on the worker's foot, then the robot producer, and the whole company who has created this robot will be found accountable. And more of these questions, we are kind of looking into this in one of our IEEE projects, which is called Human-Centered Technologies for Safer and Greener European Construction Industry. There is the QR code. It is called HumanTech. So if you are more interested to that, please have a look. And I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabor. Very impressive presentation. Any questions here? Well, I have questions. Yes, I want to talk with you about the HMI level. Why you divide it in 6 levels? Like the last one will be the 4th. What's your idea?
Why to divide it? I think it's just a better description, because when people think about collaboration or people think about cooperation, do you hear me? Sorry. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So when people think about cooperation or collaboration, they many times, at least in the scientific field of robotics, not all of them agree that where is the collaboration, what is the cooperation. And I think with introducing the levels, it is a way better, easier expression that, similar to the autonomous cars, you have levels. And then with this kind of a description, I introduce a more kind of number-based system, that the level 4, then everyone understands that these are the requirements to actually achieve level 4. And the level 5 is something new. It's need to be explored, and that's why I'm really curious to find it out, whether we can represent the human being as a cooperation partner in this sense. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Raja, you have a question? Yes, please. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for this talk. I had a question about the following. How is the robot aware about the human? I mean, for example, the interaction for cooperation or collaboration. How does it happen? Is it by gestures and voice? And what's the medium through which the robot knows about the human presence, human intentions, etc.?
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. So per today, at least the robot that I was showing to you, that is equipped with, first of all, 360 degrees cameras. So it is protected by computer vision, for example. That's the very first line of kind of safety. The second one, it is also equipped with LiDAR. So it can also detect the depths, and also the human part, the human itself, it needs to be equipped with, in this case, as you mentioned, it was a gesture recognition system. So the human is also have a sensory system to precisely detect the intention of the human. Because if we only use camera-based system, then we always have to find a way how we can look on the human without any kind of occlusion. If the human tends to see a little bit to the side, then we don't see the facial expression, and then we actually can't really decide whether the human is paying attention to the robot or not. So we need to have also sensor on the human part itself. So the human, in this case, at least in the research phase, we need to have a system that detects the intention of the human, and that is used using a glove system that is a gesture system. Yeah. And then this information is gathered to one big decision making, on the robot side.
Thank you. The question is also, do you detect the gaze of the person, or is it really the expression on the face?
If the face is visible, then we try to go for the facial expression, but the gaze is also detected. So we are able to detect, but that's very rough. So at least we know that it's facing towards something, or it wants to point to something. So that's the baseline. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Gabor. Thank you, Raja. So I would like to ask you to stay just a few minutes because we're going to do also a picture at the end. So we'll ask you to turn on your cameras just in a few minutes. So I hope you enjoy the workshop. I know there were a lot of them online, but as I said, so we had people from different areas. So lawyers that are not used to come to the conference usually, but we succeeded to have them anyhow here. And some of them, they were also on vacation. And some of them, they had COVID. So we are really, but I hope so we learned a lot of things. So we discussed it, we saw different aspects from, like for Assistive, Raja gave a very nice presentation at the beginning just for the opening and showing what are the challenges. Vera also discussed from another point of view, another aspects like for AA Act, especially in Europe, and what are the challenges. And finally, that is not so easy. We saw also the presentation of Jim, who is also very active in this area and has a lot of projects and other new workshops that are coming in different venues. And we saw the last two presentations, they were much more like, let's say, technical or an application based, and this was quite broad. Of course, so this is not the first workshop on this topic, and it's not going to be the last one. But what I want to say is there are still a lot of aspects to take into consideration. And as we know from a cartoon, we are not there yet. Okay, so we have many aspects to think about. As I said, ethical awareness, ethical by design. So all these aspects should be really be in our heads all the time when we are designing and trying to do this kind of new systems, AI system that will be deployed maybe one day. Okay, so that's really very important. Does anyone here has any questions or comments or anything for the future? No. Okay. So then I will ask everyone online to just turn on your camera if it's possible, and everyone here in the room just to come in front, and so that we can take a picture. So, okay. Put my first, my first one. Yeah, this one. Share. No, it's here.
Please first adjust.
It doesn't matter. We will do it. Yeah, perfect.
Project or not?
Yeah, project, but it's not project. No. Oh, yes. Do you have the volunteer?
So if project, we can't see them.
Oh, okay. No,
No, just
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not good. Erase. Yeah, perfect.
Yes. Right, yeah.
Oh,
But we should all be on the same side.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
People online? But we are happy. What I said earlier to Jim was he was not very ethical with the chocolate, but finally everyone stayed to the end, and the means are reached.
It was a tough compromise.
Yes, thanks you.
Thank you, everyone online. Thank you for attending. The presentation were great, and we will come back soon to you and to have some questions and to share some of the the output of the workshop. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, stop.
Yes. Yeah.